Hare Krishna. Thank you. And before we begin, thank you, Vrajmohan Prabhu, my very dear friend. He's also here. He's from the same monastery. Vrajmohan Prabhu is actually an expert on the Gita, and I'm feeling a little, I won't say uncomfortable, but no. He's written a book on the, what is the name of the book? The Gita Sutras. So he's done his IIT Bombay engineering, and then he did his MS from University of Chicago. Then he did a PhD also? No.
Not yet.
Not yet. So he's an expert on the Gita, and he's here going to test whether I'm going to speak the properly or not. So thank you everyone for coming, and I want to honestly tell you, Meghna and Baldev and Sagar, that I feel very happy when I come for these sessions, because it helps me summarize the entire one chapter of the Gita in one session. So it helps me also understand the essence, because what is the most important in this chapter I'm able to meditate as I'm speaking. So this has been a very big blessing. Thank you. Today is the 14th session of Gita Lessons and Discussions, and today we are on the 6th chapter. But before we start the 6th chapter, I want to summarize the first 5 chapters, because many of you are coming for the first time today. So I actually borrowed it from Swami Bhagavan Keshav Swami Maharaj. We have an acronym for each chapter that helps us remember the flow of the chapter. The first chapter of the Gita is filled with Arjuna's doubts. So Arjuna is a archetypal confused person. He's on the verge of the most important battle of his life, and he is confused. And a warrior who's never lost a battle in his life, he says, I won't fight this war. So there has to be something happening inside him that's making him say all of this. So the easy way to remember this first chapter is with the acronym DOUBT. D-O-U-B-T. So D stands for diplomacy of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. The first few verses of the first chapter reveal how Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana, how they are being very diplomatic, their conversation, and what they are saying, what they mean. And we discussed, when we were discussing the first chapter, the importance of congruence in our lives. How inside and outside has to be same. And Dhritarashtra gets exposed right in the very first verse of the Gita. Because all his life he's been saying that Pandavas and Kauravas are equal to me. But in the very first verse of the Gita, he says, what's happening between my sons and the sons of Pandu? So there is his partiality is exposed. So we were discussing a long time ago when we were in the first chapter how if our inside and outside is not same, then it's a matter of time before when our inside takes revenge. We need to develop congruency. We need to work on it. So that is the first lesson. So D-O-U-B-T. O stands for ominous signs. So in the first few verses of the first chapter of the Gita, there are a lot of signs that portend to Kaurava's defeat and Pandava's victory. So auspicious signs, and how we can make our lives auspicious. We discussed during that time the importance of all the auspicious symbols and the samskaras and the rituals and their significance in the Sanatana Dharma tradition. And then U-B-T, doubt. U stands for uncertainty, B for bewilderment, and T for the turning point. So this is how Arjuna gives different reasons for not fighting the war. He's bewildered, he's uncertain, and he gives different arguments. All of that is covered in the first chapter of the Gita. The second chapter begins with Krishna admonishing Arjuna for his being bewildered. He doesn't get a friendly pat and a empathetic, Krishna doesn't lend an empathetic ear. Generally we would expect a friend to be there to support you. But Krishna calls him a eunuch. And that's a very strong statement for a Kshatriya to hear from a friend. So that's very interesting actually. The first few verses of the second chapter where Arjuna is castigated, Krishna tells him, you have developed weakness of the heart. How you are a warrior, come on, get up, fight. Tekto tishta parantapa, get up and fight. And Arjuna says, Bhiksham api loke. It's better to be a beggar than to fight a war. He starts becoming a philosopher. And he says, I want to beg, I want to be a renunciant, I want to give up. And so, renunciation, Arjuna is exposed here. He wants to renounce not because he's developed a strong desire to know the spiritual truths, but he's seeking renunciation because he doesn't want to face the challenges that we all inevitably face in the sojourn of our lives. So that is the Gita. The second chapter can be remembered with an acronym, Gita, G-I-T-A. G stands for Guru. So the first few verses is when Arjuna stops. At one point of time, Arjuna says, Krishna, I stop this friendly discussion. I surrender, Shishyasteham sadimam tvam prapannam. Oh Krishna, I'm tired of all these arguments. Because whatever arguments he presented, Krishna smashed those arguments. Krishna didn't offer any empathy. So when he said, Krishna, I surrender, Krishna, enough of friendly discussions. Please tell me what is the right thing to do. Dispel the doubts, the cloud of doubts that have gathered in my head. Then Krishna takes the position of a guru. And then they actually have a friendly discussion. So that's Guru, G-I-T-A. Then Krishna explains the identity. I stands for identity, which is the first and the most basic teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, which makes it very special compared to all other religious texts and spiritual texts. Identity, Krishna explains, we are not the body, we are the soul. Just like a car as a driver, this body as a driver, soul. Just like the car has headlights, the car has 4 tires, so we have 2 hands, 2 legs, we have eyes. But this body is functioning because there is an energy, there is consciousness within. Atman, soul, Brahman, known by different names. So Krishna speaks about how we go through many births, and just like we change our dress, how we keep changing our bodies. Vasam sijirnani yatha vihaya navani granhati naro parani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. Krishna says how we go through childhood, boyhood, youth, old age. Just like we give up old garments, take up new clothes. Similarly, we take up new bodies, but our journey is going on. So identity is the second topic of the second chapter. G-I-T. T stands for 2 duties. Because when we hear about the soul, some of us may artificially think, okay, great, so I'm not the body, I'm the soul. So let me leave everything and let me live on the level of the soul now, Like I remember one of our enthusiastic boys, ISKCON Youth Services. Young boys can be very enthusiastic and they can be completely cut off from reality also. So this boy was asked in the exam, some exam, he had to write his roll number. He wrote, I'm not the body, I'm the soul. The roll number is for the body. So we can be in our own fantastic idea about, I am not the body, I transcended the body. Krishna says, no, we all have 2 duties. The Swadharma and the Sanatana Dharma. Swadharma refers to the duties resulting out of our bodily existence. Because of this, so we have Rashtra Dharma. We have, so that's why in ISKCON, especially we monks, we follow the principle of spiritually absorbed, but we are also socially active, culturally sensitive, and politically aware. Not politically absorbed and spiritually aware. So we need to be aware. We have our duties because we have this body. So that is Swadharma. As we are practicing duties connected to this body, we also cultivate what is called as Sanatana Dharma, the duty of the soul, which is to eventually transcend this life in this world. So that is Sanatana Dharma. So 2 duties is G-I-T and A, because we wanted a proper acronym. So Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Swami gave Atma Ram. A stands for Atma Ram, which actually means self-satisfied. When Krishna was explaining all these concepts, Arjuna said, oh, these self-realized souls, what are their signs? How do they walk? How do they sit? How do they live? So then Krishna speaks about the signs of the self-realized soul. That is the second chapter of the Gita. So after all of this, Arjuna thinks, well, Krishna is speaking about fighting the war, but he's also speaking about yoga, he's also speaking about connecting to the divine. So he sees a contradiction there. Because in the Vedic tradition, if you really want to go deep into spiritual life, you generally renounce everything and you are like completely connected to the divine. So Arjuna thinks when Krishna is speaking about connecting and yoga, he's talking about renunciation. But in the same breath, Krishna is also saying, Arjuna, get up and fight. So he sees an apparent contradiction. So he says, Krishna, what is this? What do you want me to do? Do you want me to fight or do you want me to just do yoga and just leave everything? Then Krishna speaks the third chapter, which is called Karma Yoga, which is the most popular in the society today. And also most practical because most of us cannot leave homes, cannot leave our responsibilities. So the third chapter, Karma Yoga, can be remembered with an acronym TREE. T-R-E-E. T stands for Tyaga or giving up. So Krishna speaks in this chapter that giving up is not actually giving up of the activity, but our attachment to the results. And I think last class we discussed different examples from cricket and sports, how when you have a detached spirit, you actually succeed more. We discussed a few examples. I remember speaking about Shane Warne and a few examples. When we hold on to something very tightly, how we actually suffer. So we get more success when we have a spirit of detachment, Tyaga. So that's what Krishna explains in the third chapter, beginning of the third chapter. Then he gives us the rungs of yoga ladder, that is R. How we begin with no connection with yoga, no connection with God. We just work for enjoying. We want results so that we can enjoy. That is just, we are called karmis. We are not karma yogis. We just enjoy. I want to work, I want to have money, for that I enjoy. And then some of us, we are interested in spiritual life or we want to do some religious rituals so that we can enjoy better. So that's called, it's karma kanda, in the sense we perform some rituals, but we essentially want to be an enjoyer. And then we progress further. We say, okay, I think I shouldn't be so selfish. I shouldn't always be enjoying. Let me give up some results of the activity. And, but I essentially want to be an enjoyer also. That's the main thing. So we give up some fruits of our activity. So we start beginning with the yoga principle. That is Sakama Karma Yoga. Then we grow further. Then we want to give up the results of our activity. We just focus on the work. That is Nishkama Karma Yoga. We discussed all of this in the past classes. You will find all of these classes in our playlist, YouTube. What is it called? Glad. We have 13 sessions where we discussed all the yoga paths. And then there is Dhyāna-yoga, then there is Bhakti yoga. I give a simple example of, I think, people who came to our monastery to offer services, how we can know where they are. Remember how in our daily conversations we can know where we are. Like somebody came to sponsor all the book distribution bags. And then I thought he's sponsoring all of that if I want to do service. But when I accepted his offer and he got so many bags, then he gave me a bill also. Oh, then I realized, okay, he did service, but he wanted the results. So that is Sakama Karma Yoga. He was doing something for a spiritual cause, but he was also attached to the results. Another person came and he said, I want to do service in the temple. So I said, okay, come with me. Let us go and clean all the toilets. He said, no. I want to only clean the temple. So he is attached to service. He's not wanting money. He doesn't want anything. But that's called Nishkama Karma Yoga. He is not attached to the results, but is attached to the work. I can only do this kind of work. Then we had another example of another person who came and said, I want to serve in the temple. I said, would you take money? He said, no, what are you talking? I don't want money. I just want to serve. So then, do you have any preference of services? No, anything that needs to be done, I'm willing to do. That's the step of surrender, bhakti, where I let the universe dictate my life. So like that, we've discussed different examples and case studies. So that is yoga ladder, TR. And then the last two topics of third chapter is Arjuna says, Krishna, okay, I get this. I've heard all of this in the past. So should I be then engaged in work. Now when I'm, see, in the Vedic tradition, when you realize everything, na, there is a seamless gravitation towards renunciation. You get, like, kind of give up everything eventually. Like I gave the example of our Honorable Prime Minister last time, how one of our devotees met him. And when he was talking to him in a personal, private conversation, it came out of his mouth. Now, whether it is a political gimmick, that's for you to decide. But he said, well, what I'm doing is eventually temporary. I need to give up all of this. So he's coming from that background that this is a temporary thing. It's not that I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. Like whatever, at a certain point of time, I need to renounce. So the understanding is I need to give up. So Arjuna may be in that thought process, okay, I'll practice karma yoga, but eventually I'll have to give up all of this. So Krishna says, no, you have to be exemplary. That is the E of tree. Arjuna, what great men do, common men follow. So you cannot give up your duty. Very emphatic. Exemplary. So then Arjuna understands that. And in the end, Arjuna says, okay, Krishna, all of this is great. I know all of this, but still I am weak-hearted. Despite, we've gone through this. We know what is right, what needs to be done, but still we fail. Often we slip despite knowing what is the right thing to do. So Arjuna says, Krishna, I know all of this, but I slip. I'm not able to follow the standards. Why is it? Why am I weak-hearted? And then Krishna gives a very clear answer. It is the eternal enemy. That is the fourth topic. That stands for lust, which in a gross sense refers to unbridled sex desire, but it also means an intense craving or wanting. So then he speaks about lust, how lust destroys and how we need to conquer this insatiable enemy called the lust. So that's the third chapter. Because in the third chapter, Krishna also said, Arjuna, you should know knowledge. Knowledge is very powerful. So then, we may want to know what exactly is knowledge. And that's the fourth chapter, transcendental knowledge. And that fourth chapter, and in Vedic tradition, knowledge begins with the process of Shravanam, ears. So the easy way to remember the fourth chapter of the Gita is with an acronym called EARS, E-A-R-S. E stands for eternal education. And Krishna explains in the fourth chapter something very astonishing for a reader of the Gita. Very nonchalantly, Krishna says, Arjuna, what I'm going to speak to you now, I've already spoken this to the sun god millions of years ago, and then he spoke it to Manu, and Krishna speaks about he having given this knowledge millions of years ago, and Arjuna is like shocked. He said, Krishna, we are same age. We are both 125 years old and we are on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. We are friends. What do you mean you've spoken this millions of years ago? Then Krishna says, Arjuna, we both have had many, many lives. I remember everything. You don't remember anything. So then Krishna begins to explain his position. And he starts explaining how he is not like us. We are both same. We are same as God. In the sense, we are Sat Chit Ananda, we are eternal, fully conscious, fully blissful. Qualitatively, we are same as God, but quantitatively, we are different. So Krishna establishes that position, and then he gives an accurate understanding. That is the EA of ears, E-A-R-S. So there are some misconceptions in the Vedic tradition. One of the misconceptions is all paths lead to the same goal. So Krishna explains, yes, in one sense, all paths do lead to the same goal, but there is certain variegatedness, and not everything leads to the same destination. You can't take in one sense, if you take a flight from Mumbai to Turkey, Istanbul, and you take another flight to New York, in one sense, maybe the flight to Istanbul will eventually go to New York, but still it's not the same. It's a long journey. So Krishna says it's not that everything leads to the same destination. Another misconception is about the Varnashrama, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Krishna dispels this misconception also. He says it's not based on birth, but it's based on your qualities and how the society needs people who are administrators, people who are craftsmen, laborers, mercantile, business class, and also intellectuals. So like that. And then also Krishna speaks about another misconception about, I don't remember now. This is something more. Yeah, all paths lead to same goal. Huh? Caste system is second. Anything else? A few things like this, yeah. Basically, it gives an accurate understanding of a few other things that we may get bewildered by. That's EA. And then R stands for removing reactions. Whenever we work, whatever we do, we get a reaction. You do good, you get a good reaction. You do bad, you get a bad reaction. So in this section, Krishna speaks about how can we perform action by which we get no reaction? Neither good nor bad. Because good reaction also means you have to come back to this world to enjoy the reactions. So then he speaks about akarma, the concept of akarma. Karma is good actions, good results. Vikarma is bad action, bad results. Akarma is no reaction. So in ISKCON, we practice this by, we have this midday meal schemes and food for life. We distribute food. Every 4 seconds, one hungry child is fed food all over some corner of the world, thanks to ISKCON's activities. So, but then this is not ordinary food. So you do a good activity, you get good result. You're giving food to the child, but so there is a process of offering this food to the Lord and making it prasad, making it sanctified spiritually. So one honors this prasad, sacred food, that person also gets freedom from reactions. So it's not simply a good activity, that is spiritual. You are helping a soul in his journey back to God. So that is removing reactions. And then the most important topic of the 4th chapter is SEARS. S stands for sacrifice. To get something higher in life, we need to practice sacrifice. And the biggest sacrifice is sacrifice of the ego. And there Krishna speaks about the importance of Guru. Tadviddhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. So, but of course, Krishna has not diminished the importance of Karma Yoga. It's not, we have to do both, practice our duties and also have an attitude of approaching the spiritual teacher. Like one Grihastha told me, बहुत फर्क है आपकी और मेरी तालीम में. Talim means education. I said yes. So then he said, बहुत फर्क है आपकी और मेरी तालीम में. आपने उस्तादों से सीखा है, मैंने हालातों से. So that's true. Life is tough and we learn from all the challenges we go through. Krishna has never undermined that. But at the same time, we need spiritual education. I'll give a simple example. Today afternoon, I was with a boy. I've known him since he was a child. So he's a friend. He's a son of my very, very dear friend. And he and another girl, both of them are doing MBBS in a very prominent medical college in Mumbai. They have completed their MBBS. They are on their internship now. And they have been Hare Krishna devotees since their birth. So I asked them, how is your life different? You are now doing your internship, you are now going to do your MD or whatever. He says, both of them said this to me at different times. Today he told me, I'm very sobered. Whatever I've read in the scriptures, I see as a doctor, a lot of suffering everywhere. And it has made me sober and grateful. So this, and then he also compares it with his other friends who are not at all connected to spiritual life, how they become desensitized to death and suffering. And he gave a few examples of how being disconnected from a higher reality, a higher pursuit, makes you very callous towards human suffering. So like that. So it helps. It helps to have connection with something sacred. So that is the sacrifice part. And after this, once again, the 5th chapter is also again called Karma Yoga, because Arjuna doesn't want any more doubt. Sometimes we ask question again. That's because we want another purport. We want another insight into that. So Arjuna says, Krishna, please, for the final time, just clarify my doubt. Should I work? Should I fight? Or should I leave? This is the last time Arjuna asks this in the Gita. And Krishna says, STEP, S-T-E-P, this is the acronym for the 5th chapter. S stands for, emphatically Krishna says, stay in the world. Because renunciation is not renunciation of the activity, it's the renunciation of the desire to be the controller and enjoyer. For last month, we discussed this in great detail. Giving up. So that is, and then it's very important to practice karma yoga, because many times many people say, I'm a karma yogi, but actually we are not karma yogis. We could be very attached to the idea that I am the controller and everything is happening because of me. So therefore, in this chapter, the T stands for 3 doers. Krishna explains how there are 3 doers of any activity. Like, for example, Krishna says, who are the 3 doers? First he says is you, or I, the living entity. I desire. So when I desire strongly, and if I also deserve, then there is a second doer, who is called Paramatma, the Lord in the heart. He sanctions that desire. And when the desire is sanctioned, then there is a third doer, which is the material nature. So that orchestrates the fulfillment of the desire. So Krishna speaks Jiva, Ishvara and Prakriti. All 3 are doers. Jiva is the living entity. So you leave this house and go to the airport. You take a taxi, the taxi drives you to the airport and you reach the airport on time. So the Jiva role, or your desire, is compared to you booking the taxi and you sitting in the taxi. That's your job. And the driver here is compared with the Paramatma, the Ishvara, the one who makes it happen. And the vehicle that takes you there is compared to the Prakriti. So there are 3. Of course, in the 18th chapter, we will study how 5 factors are involved in the results. That will come to later, much later. But as of now, Krishna says, stay in the world, do your activities, because there are 3 doers. Don't be proud that you are doing. Arjuna, don't think you are fighting the war. Don't think you are a great champion. When Virat Kohli was asked, he did something spectacular a few years ago in some T20 match. He hit some sixers, and then the last 2 overs, there was lot of runs needed against Pakistan, and he did something spectacular. And when he was asked, how did you do it? He said, I can't explain how I did it, and because I can never do it again. It was a force beyond me. That is recognizing that you are not the only doer. So I'm not sure whether he knows this principle, but he is exhibiting this principle. He is practicing this to be aware that I am not the only doer. So that's the 3 doers. And then Krishna says in the 5th chapter, STEP. The E stands for equal vision. One who practices this, consciously always, that I am not the only doer. There are factors beyond me. Such kind of people, yes.
So the 3 doers, right?
3 doers.
Yeah. So in that, sometimes you feel that the deity is actually making you do something or go somewhere.
Yes.
So is it something that comes from the doers, from the deity's calling, or is it you?
Yeah. So we are now entering the zone of paralysis by analysis. So see, there are 3 doers. Okay, I desire, and the Lord sanctions, and the universe confirms it, or universe arranges it, orchestrates it. So as a doer, there is a certain element where there's a certain point in my doing where I let go the doing. Where there is struggle, like you're on the chariot, you're holding the reins of the horses, and the horses are running. That is struggle space. All of us have gone through that. We all live in the struggle zone all the time. And at some point of time, you give up the reins of the horses. I can't do this. Oh Krishna, oh universe, oh divine, I surrender. And then you see another force take charge of the chariot. So that's a different ball game. When you're in that space, then this kind of intellectual discussions has no place. Because you are not you. See, we all live in 3, one of the 3. Okay, I'll pause here because this is a very relevant question. See, we all live in 3 zones, 3 spaces all the time. One of the 3 spaces all the time in your inner world. Just like externally right now, you are here. In your inner world, you could be in one of the 3 houses or one of the 3 places. Ask yourself, where are you right now? The first is the house of, or the space of sense gratification. I could be here And I could be thinking of pizza, vada pav, feast. And externally, I could be in a temple space, but thinking of enjoying. We all have lived in that space. That is the house of sense gratification. That's like being on the chariot and the horses are going wild and you are like a helpless passenger. You're not in control of the chariot. All of us, you've been in this space. Yes? I'm talking about the inner world, not the external. So, sense gratification. And the second space where we live is called the space of struggle, where we take, horses are not going wild, but I take charge of the horses and I'm pulling the reins of the horses and I'm struggling, I'm trying to meet gaps. Oh, I have to get grocery. I have to send this email. I have to get this project done on time. I have to send this satellite to the space. I have to do so many things. How dare he say that to me? I'm going to give a fitting reply to him. All the things we do, all the struggle we go through, all the gaps we meet. We're in charge. I'm in control. And when we come to spiritual life also, we get into this control mode all the time. Struggle. So this space is also very common. So you could be in this class and you could be thinking, oh, tomorrow is Monday. I've got so many things to do. So struggle space. Generally struggle, when it gets tiring, we enter sense gratification. And to sustain sense gratification, we need to struggle. That's how we keep going through in this world. You're talking about is when a passenger in that chariot has decided that I can't let the horses go wild. And I'm also tired of trying to control the horses. The chariot is beyond my control. And at some point of time, every spiritual seeker comes to a stage where he says, I surrender. I let go the reins and I ask the universe, I beg the universe to take charge. And then you see wonders, then you see miracles happen. You see a force beyond you drive that chariot. Now this third space, surrender, appears very similar to the first space of sense gratification. Because in both spaces, you're not in charge of the chariot. But the difference is in the first space, the mind is going wild. In the third space, it's a higher force. So therefore, struggle is important. Studying the Gita is important. Because struggle will help us let go at the right time and understand the value of surrender. Krishna wants Arjuna to struggle and then let go and practice surrender also. So we can't just artificially jump from sense gratification to surrender. The mind will cheat. The mind knows how to come through the back door. Mind will come dressed as Krishna. And we can be, that's what Krishna says in the 5th chapter, don't be a pseudo-renunciant. A sincere sweeper in the street is better than a shortened meditator. Krishna speaks about mithyachara. Krishna says, oh Arjuna, you renounce everything and then you contemplate desires to enjoy sense gratification. You are a pretender. And Krishna speaks very strong words against pretender renunciants. So therefore, surrender is not simply, I just give up everything and my mind, it masquerades as a divine ordained activity, but then I actually fulfill my own I gratify my own desires. So therefore, it's very deep, and when we let go, then that's a different law that takes place. Then I won't have answers to your questions, because you will find, then you won't ask questions. Krishna says that in the 2nd chapter, there's nothing to ask and there's nothing to know, because you are on that space.
So that's really happened. I have this mind and I was like, wow, you just don't know what happened here.
Your trip to Madurai, South?
Yeah, that's one of the things. So.
Yeah, that's true. That happens to every sincere spiritual seeker at some point of time. So that's removing, where were we? Equal vision. No, 3 doers ho gaya. Equal vision is when you realize this, or when you understand the 3 doers, you see everyone equally. You don't discriminate. In fact, later in the 18th chapter also, Krishna says how those who sincerely practice spiritual life, they will never discriminate between different religious paths. He says the Sattva-guna religion practice, and he explains very graphically how when we are driven by different modes, how we see religious paths, how we become fanatics. All of that is explained very beautifully by Krishna later. But here he says, one who sincerely practices spiritual life will see everyone equally. He will have an equal vision. And finally, Krishna says, ends the 5th chapter by talking about peace. Peace is when we connect to the Supreme Lord within. Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhurtam sarva bhutanam gyatva mam shantim richati. Krishna says how when we understand that the Supreme Lord is my best friend, He is my eternal guide, He is my well-wisher. This is not simply an intellectual adjustment. This is actually living in that space. मैं रोज़ गुनाह करता हूँ तो रोज़ मुझे माफ़ करता है. मैं आदत से मजबूर हूँ तो रहमत से मशहूर है. That's the mood of a devotee. That I'm stuck by my habits. आदत से मजबूर हूँ. But you, O Lord, you're merciful. That's your greatness. So therefore, in this mood, we approach the Lord, and we understand that the Lord is the best friend in the heart. So Krishna explained briefly in the 5th chapter the concept of Ashtanga yoga practices. For the 6th chapter is entirely dedicated to Dhyāna-yoga. That is the 6th chapter, which we are supposed to start today. And so this is very easy to remember. 6th chapter, Dhyāna-yoga. All of you can go back today understanding that 6th chapter of the Gita speaks about 4 topics. Easy, E-A-S-Y. So the E stands for enemy or friend. The mind, what is the mind? Is it an enemy or is it a friend? Because Ashtanga yoga, the yoga that Krishna is speaking in this chapter, Dhyana yoga, is based on controlling the mind. But then we wonder whether the mind is a friend or an enemy. So the first 9 verses, Krishna tells us that the mind is an enemy also, and the mind is also a friend. I think all of us are experiencing that voice within many times. We are not sure. We all have experienced 2 voices. The voice of the devil and the voice of the Lord. So this is the first topic. And then A stands for Ashtanga yoga, which is the main cream of this chapter. 25 verses where Krishna gives elaborate explanations on how to practice this yoga. Go to the forest. The first thing Krishna says, go to the forest. You can't go to the forest nowadays. But basically at the end of the chapter, Arjuna says, Krishna, this is not only unsustainable, but also very impractical. And Krishna admits it also in the end. Because the first thing Krishna says is, okay, go to the forest, practice strict celibacy, control your breath, and all those explanations he gives on Dhyana yoga. That is the A part of the easy Ashtanga yoga. Almost 25 verses on this. And then, after hearing all of this, Arjuna says, Krishna, I can't do this because my mind is very fickle, uncontrollable. And then Krishna says, yes, it's very difficult, but by practice and detachment, you can do it. So that's covered in this chapter. And then finally, Arjuna says, great Krishna, okay, what if I fail? That is success and failure. That is the third topic. Then I'll be like I practice intense spirituality, and then if I fail, then I've failed materially also, because I've given up something to practice spiritual life, and then I don't succeed in my spiritual practices. So I'm neither here nor there. And then Krishna dispels that doubt by saying, if you practice even a little bit of spirituality, there is no loss. He explains how when people, they take birth in very pious families, or they have a natural inclination towards spirituality that's coming from their past lives, because there is no loss or diminution. I've seen it in my monastery, I joined 26 years ago, and I've seen some young monks join, and they read the Gita, and they're like, 2-3 weeks, they know, it seems they know all the verses. And I'm like, how do you know this? Oh, I don't know how I know this, but I know it. So when they read it, it's as if they've already known it. So it's coming from some past impressions, past connections. And I've seen many people like that. So spiritual life, some people progress very fast. One boy who joined, he was struggling with so many things when he was coming new to the temple, and he was attending my weekly classes in the year 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. And then something happened. He joined the monastery, and today, 2025, he is one of the senior most priests in our temple, and he counsels me. And he had to take his permission to enter the sacred altar and do deity worship. And I can see he is different. He's evolved. He is on a different journey. So this is all what Krishna is speaking in the 6th chapter. That there are some people who have, there is no loss or diminution. That's what Krishna says in this section. There is no failure. And the last part is yogi. EASY. Krishna says, Arjuna, become a yogi. But who is the best yogi? And Krishna says, the best yogi is one who meditates on me. Remember me in your heart, always. That's the easiest way to do yoga. Remember me. And have faith and offer your love to me. So what we will do, we will explore a few verses from this section that will help us understand this section better. So what are the 4 topics of the 6th chapter? Easy to remember. E stands for enemy or friend. So the mind is an enemy or friend. That's the first 9 verses of this chapter. And the next 25 verses is on Ashtanga Yoga, which you can later on read details. All the practical things Krishna speaks about, how you go, how you meditate, you go to the forest, sit on a kusha grass, things like that. And then the 3rd topic is success and failure. And so please be assured, it's never that you will be in a no man's land. It's not that you will fail. Even if you give up practice of Hare Krishna after some time, there's still no loss. Because at some point of time, you will begin from there. And finally, the yogi, Krishna says, is the best yogi is one who meditates on him. Okay? So we'll take a few verses which will give us an idea of what's actually happening in this chapter. Although I've summarized the whole 6th chapter. So can you repeat after me verse number 5, and one of you can read translation after we chant this verse. All of you have access to the verse? Yes. Please repeat. Uddaredatmanatmanam Natmanam avasadaye Atme vai atmano bandhur Atme varipuratmanaha. Who will read the translation? Meghna has to decide. Just the translation.
One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well.
Actually, Gita contains these kind of sutras. Atmeva atmano bandhur, atmeva ripuratmana. Mind is the friend and mind is the enemy. So you may say, okay, when is the mind friend and when is the mind enemy? That's explained in the next verse. Please repeat. Bandhuratmatmanastasya enatmaivatmana jitah anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat.
For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for the one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy.
So if we conquer our mind, if we can say no to the mind, then we can conquer the mind, and then the mind would become a friend. See, ISKCON practices are designed in such a way, like many of you, I don't know how much involved you are in ISKCON practices, but if you would be interested, I'm there to help you, guide you. These practices are designed to help you move from dealing with the mind as an enemy to see your mind as a friend. But it doesn't happen overnight. It's not like, okay, my mind is my enemy now. No. Actually, many times I tell in the classes, just to get the attention of the audience, we are not here to control the mind. We don't want you to control your mind. The Gita says control your mind. I say no. Just become aware of your mind. First, awareness is the first step. So what we practice is through the chanting and also through journaling. We have done journaling exercises here. We try to practice what is called as Sakshi Bhava or witness consciousness. In the Vedantic and Yogic tradition, we speak about how we see ourselves as separate from our mind. I have given a name to my mind. You know the name? Chanchal. So that's what Arjuna calls his mind later on in this chapter. So I borrowed that name and I like it. So I say Chanchal. So when I practice Sakshi Bhava or witness consciousness, or when I practice what is called as awareness journal, or when I chant Hare Krishna, I just objectively explain what my mind is saying without judging the mind for it. Observing without judging. The video camera is observing me right now. The video camera is not judging me. Some of you may be judging me. What is he speaking? How long will this class last? The room is very cold. Whatever. So many things the mind is constantly analyzing so many things. But the camera doesn't do that. So similarly, let's switch on the camera in our inner world and for some time observe without judging. So when I practice my awareness journal, this is what I write in the morning. So I begin with the prayer, Krishna, I love you. Krishna, I want to serve you. And then suddenly at some point of time, I feel this is not coming from my heart. This is not a heartfelt prayer. So I stop it and I practice Sakshi Bhava. I practice awareness journal, or I practice witness consciousness. I just write what the mind is saying. Chanchal is telling me to get up and go to the washroom. Chanchal now demands to know why I got up late in the morning. Now Chanchal says, rush to the temple. Now Chanchal says, no, stay back here. So the more you just write what the mind is saying without judging the mind, then at some point of time the mind will go blank. Like a tantrum throwing spouse who has been apprehended and who are just listening, yes, yes. And at some point of time, the partner has nothing to say. Thak gaya ho. Because you've heard, you are present. And when the mind stops, you can feel it. You can feel your peace. You can feel that peace because it's like you turn to your left where Chanchal is. And yes, Chanchal, what are you saying? Okay, this is what you're saying. Okay, okay. And then Chanchal stops. And when she stops, again I turn back to my right. Krishna, I love you. Krishna, I want to serve you. So when I say this a second time, the same sentence, what I've written, I wrote my first paragraph. Krishna, I want to serve you, I love you. But it carried no energy. But then when I dropped it and I wrote the second paragraph, I simply wrote what the mind was saying. And then the third paragraph is simply a repetition of the first paragraph. It's simply copy-paste. I'm writing the same stuff what I wrote in the first paragraph. But when I'm writing it now, it carries my voice. The mind's voice is drawn. But then again the mind will speak something. Again I come back to awareness. So it's awareness and prayer. I keep going back and forth. And at the end of half an hour, it's like, what happens after the end of half an hour? I sit on my chair and I look at my left and I say, wow, I have a mind who is not me. That's a big realization. Even if I've not conquered my mind, just to know that mind and me are different, that's a big victory. So at least once a day, we need to spend some time separating ourselves from our mind. So that's the whole game in ISKCON. So when we chant Hare Krishna Japa, we have these beads, we chant Hare Krishna. And when we do that, we learn to separate ourselves from our mind. So this is called Sakshi Bhava or witness consciousness. You'll find plenty of content on YouTube, internet. But awareness journal is something very unique which I practice and it has helped me handle my mind. So then what happens when we do this is what I experience and what Krishna reveals in the verse number 7. Please see this. Please repeat after me. Jitatmana prashantasya Paramatma samahita Shitoshna sukha dukkheshu Tatamana apamanayo.
One was
such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same.
So like this, Krishna explains, when we separate ourselves from our mind, we actually experience a connection with the divine. And this journey is very fascinating, why? Because in my journey, I realized that mind has many layers. When I just realized that, sometimes I feel I have figured out what my mind is saying. Actually, that's not what I figured out. That's something more to the mind than what I think I've figured out. Mind is very subtle. Like, there is a voice of the mind and there is something unspoken. It's deeper in the chitta. Mana, buddhi, ahankar, chitta, the consciousness, there is deeper stuff. And then the more you practice awareness, even that gets uncovered. And then the more you practice awareness, and even the subtlest layers, you access all of it and you remove all of it and then you touch your chitta, your actual consciousness. Then that's when you are in the I space. I'll give a simple example. Maybe you can relate to this. I have a friend who is in London, and once I did this non-violent communication seminar. I don't know if you've read this book, Marshall Rosenberg. He speaks about needs, feelings, communication, and also Stephen Covey talks about seek first to understand, then to be understood. I spoke about all of this. So then this person came back and told me something interesting after a few days. He said, I practice this principle and it works. And as he was speaking about his wife, I could connect it to my companion, my partner. Who is that? Chanchal. Everything he was saying was making sense to me. He said, I came back home from office and my wife started shouting at me. And her main anger was, why am I late from office? And I was so angry. I wanted to give it back to her because we had agreed just 2 weeks ago that I would work late in the office. I would work 4 or 5 hours extra because we need to make some extra money. Because in UK, life is a little difficult for them. So he had agreed to work for more hours. So he said, she knows it. We agreed upon it. So why is she making a big fuss of this, that I'm coming late from office? But then Prabhu, I remembered what you spoke in the class. I had said, don't first understand, then you need to be understood. So first listen, understand, reflect back what she's saying and rephrase what she's saying. So he did that, he said, and then he says, and then I realized that, our main anger was not that I'm coming late from office. As I kept hearing her, and then the real thing came out. The real thing was, I'm not helping her in the kitchen. Because they don't have servants there and they have to do the whole thing. And then he said, but Prabhu, when she said that, I got more angry because we had agreed, we had divided the responsibilities of the house and she's supposed to take care of the kitchen and everything else, the house, the rest of the things, everything I'm supposed to do. So when she's asking me for help in the kitchen, I was again tempted to snap at her and tell her, no, you are wrong. You're supposed to do that. But then again I said, yes, so you are upset that I'm not helping in the kitchen. And then he kept reflecting back and then he said, then the real thing came out. After 20-25 minutes of just reflecting back, the real grouse was that she was feeling a lot of pain because earlier they would visit India from London to meet her parents every 8 months, 6 to 8 months. Now for 2 years they have not been because of some challenges they're having financially and all of that. So she's missing her parents a lot. Now how that came out, that pain of missing her parents were in India, that came out as you're coming late from office and then you're not helping me in kitchen. And then he said, after she realized that and I realized that, he said there was so much of tension that was released and we felt more connected to each other and we also felt more peaceful in our relationship. So as he was saying that, I was beaming. I said, yes, this is how it works in our inner world also. Just being aware, you realize that the issues are deeper. And at one day when you come in touch with yourself, you are completely at peace. You are comfortable in your own skin. You are like, what Brené Brown, she speaks about in all her books, in all her talks about how vulnerability is a strength, how we need to be, all that she speaks is what Bhagavad Gita says, but she says it in modern language. So I saw some of her interviews with Oprah Winfrey and some of her. I'm reading one of her books now. This is what she says. Just get in touch with yourself. Just become aware and have the courage to admit. But it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a switch on, switch off button. A regular practice is needed. That's what Krishna explains in this chapter. So like this, so I'm just going ahead. Basically, I'm talking about the private space. The whole chapter, I've taken it as when Krishna says, go to the forest, sit on this kusha grass. I'm not dismissing it. I'm taking it as when Krishna says, go to the forest, I take it as Krishna telling me, Vraja Bihari, go to your private, my space. Spend time with yourself. So I have my own space, breathing, journaling and praying. I've done that in the past year. So when I'm in that space, I'm in the forest. Nobody can disturb me. So like this, Krishna speaks about all of this. And then he gives a very important sutra for all of us. This is verse number 17. Can you please repeat after me? Yuktahara viharasya Yuktacheshtasya karmasu Yuktasvapnavabodhasya Yogo bhavati dukkhaha.
He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation and work can mitigate all material plans by practicing
Pains.
the yoga system.
Yeah. Mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. So balance is what Krishna is talking about. Extreme is not good. So I follow this rule: heart, head, and hands. See that you take care of all these three every day. Heart refers to the bhakti yoga practices, connection with the Lord, spending some time in the space. And head is sharpening the intelligence, reading some scriptures, discussing spirituality. And hand refers to practical service, doing something, contributing basically. Connection and contribution are the two principles of my life. And for every Hare Krishna devotee, it's all based on connection and contribution. So you could have a small, column, date and 3 columns, head, heart and hand. Did I take care of my head today, heart and my hands? So every time, sometimes there will be a gap. So next day you can always make up. So like this, so Krishna speaks about these principles, and then he gives us a sutra of how to manage the mind when we are involved in our spiritual practices. Like you may say, sir, ठीक है प्रभु जी आप जो बोल रहे हो, but मन तो मन है. It's very, very chanchal. So Krishna gives a sutra in verse number 26. Can you please repeat? Yato yato nischalati Manaschanchala astiram Tatastato niyam yetad Atmanneva vasham naye.
From wherever the mind wanders, it is flickering and unsteady nature. One must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self.
Yeah, this is what we do when we chant Hare Krishna. The mind wanders. Now sometimes people tell me, Hare, when we chant Hare Krishna, my mind wanders, Prabhuji. Congratulations, that means you're normal. Relax. Don't worry if the mind wanders. In fact, you should be worried if the mind doesn't wander, because that means you've either become a pure spiritualist, highly advanced, or you need to see a doctor. Because mind has to wander. That's the nature of the mind. Fine, that's okay. But what does Krishna say? Bring it back. So what we do when we chant Hare Krishna, as the mind wanders, we get it back to the sound of the holy name. We chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So as the mind wanders, bring it back to the sound. Kali Kale Nam Rupe Krishna Avatar. So in this day and age, the sound is the incarnation of the Lord. So when we chant, like in different traditions they chant Om, and different, even Buddhists chant sound. So when we chant Hare Krishna, we are connecting to the sound, and when the mind wanders, we bring it back to listening to the sound. So when we listen to the Hare Krishna sound, we are actually listening to the Lord. In a relationship, you speak and the other person listens to you. But then you also listen when the other person speaks. So when we are listening to the sound, we are actually listening to the voice within. We see that the cleansing happens. Yes?
But in a jap, when you actually doing the jap and not kind of calling it out, then how would you kind of bring your mind back?
So that's why now when you're riding a horse, you just don't sit on a horse and pat the horse. You have the reins. Similarly, this listening, the actual producing the sound from your throat and listening to the sound is like holding the reins. It's very important. And then when you're advanced, then you may not need to vibrate the sound.
Muscle memory will come.
Yes, practice. But don't artificially jump to it, because then the mind, I've tried that in the past. Like one way is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. The other is the inside, when I'm chanting Hare Krishna. But then it's happened like this, like I go down, I fall asleep. And then somebody has to wake me up. And then I wake up. It's very, it's not there has to be a rigorous practice also. That's what Krishna says. See, now let's see this 34th verse. Arjuna explains a common problem of spiritual practitioners. This is one of the most famous verses of the Gita. Actually, this verse is what made me give a name to my mind. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna Pramati balavadridam Tasyaham nigraham manye Vayoriva sudushkaram.
The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind.
So Krishna has given different characteristics of the mind. He says chanchal. Chanchal means restless. Sometimes when you hear the word chanchal, you may think, chanchal is a very sweet sounding name, Oh, my mind is restless. It's sweet. No, chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati. Pramati means mad. It's not simply a sweet, restless mind. It's a mad mind. You might take a mad hai, no problem. But देखो mind तो बच्चा है जी, उसको control कर लेंगे प्यार से. नहीं, balavad. It's like an elephant. It's not simply a innocent child. Chanchalam imana Krishna pramati, and then balavad. You may say, ठीक है, strong है, mind is restless, the mind is mad, the mind is strong. No problem. I will negotiate, I will control. Dridam, stubborn, obstinate. The mind it's very difficult. And Krishna says, I can control a raging wind. Arjuna was such a powerful warrior, he could control the wind. Imagine a cyclone. No armies can stop a cyclone. They can do relief, welfare work and all of that, but you can't stop a cyclone. Arjuna had that power. He could stop a cyclone, but he says, I can't stop my mind. It's very difficult. In fact, Arjuna is the one who actually had control over his mind. When he went to the heavenly planets, Indra was very happy with this prowess. So Indra offered him the facility to enjoy with Urvashi because she was attracted to him. And Arjuna respectfully avoided her. He said, no, you are an associate of my ancestor. So you are like a motherly personality for me. So Indra says, देखो ये जो rules है ना यहाँ पे heavenly planets में apply नहीं होता है. You can enjoy her. You can enjoy with her and she is eager to be with you. He says, no. So Urvashi is considered as like the most beautiful Apsara in the heavenly planets. And Arjuna could avoid a relationship with her. So that means he actually had control over his mind. But he says, नहीं अरे बहुत मुश्किल है. So basically he's giving us, he's speaking on our behalf to Krishna. And the solution Krishna gives for this particular predicament that Arjuna expresses is the next verse, verse number 35. Please repeat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Manodunirgraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagena cha griyate.
Lord Shri Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment.
So practice and detachment. So here, these are the two takeaways for today's class, from today's class. Practice and detachment. Practice means daily committing to some spiritual discipline. Say, we practice for 2 hours, like myself, Govind Prem. Some of us here chant every day 2 hours. Vrajmohan Prabhu, we chant every day 2 hours of meditation. That's like practice. So you could begin with 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes chanting on the beats, which I will demonstrate now. You have the beats? Can just give me one? I have my beats, right? I have. है? एक दे दो मुझे. So that is practice. Okay, thank you. We could have a smaller beads also next time, maybe. चलेगा ये चलेगा. So this is generally put in a bag. We have a bead bag also. It's in ISKCON, so it's just like a bag inside this bag, so that nobody sees these beads. And then we sit in the morning time, early morning, and we chant. So inside, this is what is happening. I put my thumb and my middle finger here on these beads, and then I chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Then I go to the next bead. So this one round is completed in around 7.5 minutes to 8 minutes, chanting the entire mantra. This is called practice. So as the mind wanders, detachment means, no, this is practice. Detachment means being detached from the idea to control the mind. Because what happens is, you'll invariably start feeling at some point of time that, oh, I can't concentrate, the mind is running too wild. And then many of us, we give up, we become despondent, we give up the effort to practice. We say, yaar, chhod do yaar. No. Detachment means being detached from the idea that you have to be perfect in chanting. Like I'll tell you what happens sometimes when I'm chanting. So I chant for say 2 hours. So after 1 hour, I realized that my mind was for a plan making. And then I become aware that my mind was. See, there's a difference between mind wandering and you becoming aware that the mind is wandering. Correct? These are two different things. So when the mind is wandering, you can't do anything about it. But when you become aware that the mind is wandering, that's when we get trapped. That's when the mind tricks us. Mind says, क्या फायदा? तुम तो घूमते है, तुम्हारा mind तो घूमता रहता है. It's a mind speaking. You are a useless fellow. You can't do anything. So don't try to listen to the holy names. Give up the effort. Just complete the drudgery. Just complete the ritual of chanting. No, that's precisely when you need to say, that's when you need to practice this principle of Krishna, detachment. ठीक है, जो हो गया, हो गया. This one mantra I'm going to listen now. This is called as mindfulness. Being present. You can't bring it back. It's gone. That's why I also say mind wandering is not bad. In the sense, but not, your mind is not supposed to wander when you're chanting. But in general, mind, that's the nature of the mind. That's okay. But you are distracted. That is dangerous. When you're distracted, means you're not focused. Mind is wandering, then come back. And be detached from all the nonsense that you've done in the past. From all the places the mind has gone. Because mind will never be happy. You have everything. मन खुश है तो एक बूंद भी बरसात है. मन खुश है तो एक बूंद भी बरसात है. दुखी मन के आगे समुंदर की भी क्या औकात है. The mind is like that. You can never please the mind. Therefore, we are not mind worshippers. We need to be detached from all the nonsense the mind is speaking. That's why awareness generally is a great idea. So what happens when we chant is this is one of the two houses you will be in. Sense gratification or struggle. So when we start chanting, I remember when I joined the monastery, I was chanting like this, Hare Krishna, and I used to be very hungry because I was a young man, I was 25 years old, and I would wake up at my home, I would wake up at 7:30 in the morning, 8 in the morning, and then at 9 o'clock I would have my breakfast. But when I joined the monastery, I was getting up at 3:30 in the morning, 3. So naturally by 5 I would be hungry. But 5 o'clock is when our prayers start, and 6 o'clock is when japa meditation starts. Until 8 we chant. So around 6 o'clock I was very hungry and I'm chanting Hare Krishna, and the person we sit in japa circles. So and he was the kitchen in charge. So I asked him, "Aaj breakfast mein kya hai?" So I just thought thoda, just man behlane ke liye I just asked him, and he got so irritated by my questioning him. He was like disgusted that how can a spiritual aspirant talk about food early in the morning when he's supposed to be concentrating on me. So very sarcastically, I didn't realize it was sarcasm. He said, "Samosa and jalebi." And I said, "Really?" "Haan." And he closed his eyes and he continued to chant. So the next 1.5 hours, I was like, because samosas and jalebis were my favorite at that time. Jalebi itna crispy रहता है, गरम जलेबी मेरा samosa, wow. So I was like, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. But in my inner world, where was I? I was in the house of sense gratification. Externally, I was in the temple space, but internally. So it came out, how I was appearing to others in the room, in the temple hall was. And after japa, we have Guru Puja. So during Guru Puja, one of the monks came to me and said, "I'm very inspired by you." I said, "Why?" "You are chanting so nicely today." I didn't have the heart to tell him what I was meditating upon. But that's how we are, we are trapped by this. That's why we need practice. We need to be detached. I can't say, "Oh, my mind is thinking of food all the time, I'm useless." That kind of lamentation is used. That's why Krishna says, Vairagena cha griyate. Practice detachment. Detachment from all the nonsense you've done all these years. ठीक है यार, जो हो गया छोड़ो कल की बातें. अब अभी, right now, be here now. On another occasion, I remember I was chanting, and we had a drama festival. I think I spoke about this once. We had a drama festival. Every year we have a drama festival where we perform some different dramas in the Birla Matashri Auditorium. Very professionally directed dramas. The whole community comes together, 5,000 of us. So one of the dramas was performed by the monks in the ashram, and we had one brahmachari who was very reticent, very shy, but we forced him to act in the drama, and he just had to say one dialogue. He had to come to the stage and say, "Who is Yamuna? The king has sent a palanquin for you." But he just couldn't get it right because he was so nervous, and we were bullying him, ragging him, said, "No, to karna hi padega drama, karna hi padega." And finally, on the last day of the rehearsal, after 4 hours of practice, he finally got that sentence right. "Who is Yamuna? The king has sent a palanquin for you." We were all relieved. So drama rehearsal was complete, and next evening was the drama. But morning, we have to get up at 3:30, come for the prayers, chant our japa. So we were all chanting in the temple hall, Hare Krishna. The temple hall was silent, peaceful, serene. We were all meditating, Hare Krishna. And suddenly this person was sitting next to me, and suddenly a loud voice boomed in the temple hall. He suddenly shouted, "Who is Yamuna? The king has sent." And then he opened his eyes and he realized what he had done. He was struggling all the time. He was memorizing the dialogue, he was practicing it in his inner world so much that वो बाहर आ गया, निकल गया. And suddenly we looked at him and he realized very sheepishly. Then he apologized and we all laughed over it. But then वो जो बेचारा इतना struggle, he was in the struggle zone. Sometimes we're in the sense gratification zone or the struggle zone. But ideally chanting is when Krishna, I am yours. No, it's like Draupadi calling out, "Agre kuruna mata pandavanam dushyasanena rutavastra kesha Krishna tadakroshadananyanatha Govinda damodara madhaveti Govinda damodara madhaveti Govinda damodara madhaveti." So this is how we chant. In the mood of Draupadi was saying, Dushasana is pulling her sari and she's like, Krishna, I'm yours. Krishna, please protect me. So when we are chanting, we enter that space. So when we realize that the mind is wandering, we don't lament, because you lament, that's again the mind speaking. My dear friends, even when you criticize your mind, it's not you criticizing the mind, because if you realize, if you become aware of your mind, you won't be disturbed, you will be peaceful. So just come back and listen to the holy name. And that voice is your voice. When you call out to Krishna, when you cry, that's your voice. So bhakti is all about discovering your voice. So anyway, so we've completed almost the whole chapter. Just 2 verses we'll take. When Arjuna says, can someone read the translation of verse number 37, 38 and 39? Quickly. Kirtan? Anyone? Yes. 37, 38, 39.
Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist who is the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? O mighty arm Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere? This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt.
And Krishna answers this in verse number 40. Please repeat after me. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Parthaneveyanāmutra Vinashastasya vidyate Nahi kalyanakrit kaschet Durgatim tata gacchati.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Son of Partha, as a transcendentalist, engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction, either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil.
And the last verse of this chapter we'll chant. Please repeat after me. Verse number 47. Yoginamapi sarvesham Madgatenantaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yo mam Same yukta tamo mataha.
And of all the yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion.
So this entire chapter on Dhyāna-yoga ends with Krishna telling Arjuna, just meditate upon me. And he also has assured us that there is no loss. If you say after 6 months, you have tried so many, you have experimented with so many things in life. There is an invitation by Krishna, why don't you experiment with Bhakti Yoga practice? And there is no loss. But some of you may discover your dry grass. You know, grass, if you put fire on dry grass, it immediately takes fire. But if you put fire on moist grass, it may not catch fire, but it becomes dry. And wet grass, if you put fire, it may not catch fire, but at least it will become moist. So bhakti practices are like fire. Some of you here, I can see you are like dry grass. Sakshi was coming here for the classes. Even Karan. I remember now they are like fully into bhakti. They are going to holy places. She's a yoga teacher and she messages me every 2-3 days. She's completely into it. So some of you are dry grass. If you start practicing, you may discover your relationship with Krishna. And I'm there, Govind Prem is here. We'll be happy to guide you, serve you in your path. Some of you may be wet grass, some of you may be moist, but there is no loss. Your journey would be very auspicious. So I invite you to take part in our ISKCON's practices, Bhakti Yoga practices. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
This is the essence of the 6th chapter. So we have 5 minutes for question answers, 5 to 10 minutes max. We'll take 10 minutes question, 5 to 10 minutes we have.
Executed.
Okay, I'll take the second question first. So closing eyes and meditating is the best. But then generally when we do that, and if you're not rested well, then you start feeling sleepy. So I immediately open my eyes, and that helps me concentrate better. But then when you keep your eyes open, you get distracted by the sight, sounds. And when the distraction is more, then I close my eyes. And when I feel sleepy, I open my eyes. It's trial and error. There is no one fixed rule. So whatever works best, because the principle in spiritual life is ena kena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayat. Somehow or other, fix your mind on the divine. So closing the eyes is not the goal, or keeping eyes open is not the ultimate thing. Whatever works to concentrate better. So ideally you are supposed to sit in one place and chant, but sometimes when I'm not rested well, I've had a hectic schedule, I'm just not able to do that. So I stand and I chant. Sometimes I pace up and down. I'm just trying to listen to the holy name. Somehow get the mind on the holy name. Whatever works. So that's the way I would answer the second question. Regarding death, that's one of the 5 topics of the Gita. Last time we spoke about the 5 topics and how to understand the Bhagavad Gita in one sentence. So we spoke about death also there. So yes, success in spiritual life is when you are happy to face death. Art of living is popular, but art of dying is also important. So life is a preparation and death is an examination. So the scriptures explain that your advancing in spiritual life is gauged by the fact how receptive and how comfortable you are receiving death.
Because last night when was all of us from a building, we all came down because literally the blast that took place. When that blast happened, we all were there. But in that moment, there was no choice. There was just stillness, and I don't know. It felt that.
Yeah, you felt like a kitten. See, there is, the scriptures explain the example of a cat, which has a rat in its mouth. And the cat sometimes also has their own kitten in the mouth. For the rat, cat's mouth is death. For the kitten, cat's mouth is shelter. So, for many of us who are not grounded in spiritual practices, death, which is like cat, we feel like we're a rat. We're scared, fearful. But spiritual practices make you feel very peaceful. It's like this traditional Indian girl in the traditional Vedic society when she's getting married. I'm sure you all have experienced this or seen this in your own families. When the girl gets married, and there is the barat, and then after that in the evening they all are leaving, and the girl is crying. देखा है वो क्या बोलते हैं उसको विदाई में कितना रोती है वो. She's crying. So there are 2 things happening here. One is she's attached to her family and she has to leave them behind, and secondly there is a little uncertainty, कहाँ जा रही हूँ मैं. तो एक वो भी एक fear है, तो वो रो रही है. But there's another scenario when this girl, this is a true story of one of my nieces. तो उनका relationship था 6-7 साल का था, and lot of struggles they had to go through, and finally they were getting married. So on the day of the marriage, as विदाई हो रहा है, she was not crying. And she's telling me, रोने नहीं आ रहा है. I'm actually excited. Because she's known the family she's going to. She knows where she is going to. She's excited. She's looking forward. So similarly, this is like a devotee, a bhakti yogi. His death is like my niece getting married. अरे इतना साल से भक्ति, I know I'm going to Krishna. I'm like excited. Yes, I want to be back in the loving arms of my dear Lord. So that's the death of a devotee.
So beautiful.
So yeah. So we are right now, many of us are like that girl who is insecure, who is fearful. But I invite you to chant Hare Krishna and experience a relationship with Krishna. ठीक है?
Only one short question. So we come to you like say once a month, and we do a chapter and chapter onwards. How to incorporate reading Gita in daily life, if you can?
Yeah, all good habits begin small. So you could start with 2 minutes of reading, or maybe not even reading. You could make it as a compulsory habit. Every day I'm going to pick up the Gita and keep it in front of me, and then track it. Be accountable and connect it to some existing habit. You already have at least 100 habits. Now we all get up in the morning, we all take bath, we all eat food. So connect this new habit to an existing habit. So every day before my breakfast, I'm going to open my Gita and keep it in front of me for 1 minute. And then once you've done it, in the night, you just tick the box. Be accountable. Start something small but consistent. Every day, even if the roof falls on you, nahi karna hi aaj, ye to karna. Kuch bhi ho, karna hai. So then if you keep doing that, then that becomes a habit.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll stop here. I'm very grateful to you. I'm sorry I went beyond time. But I'm happy we completed 6 chapters. The Bhagavad Gita is divided into 18 chapters. We have covered the first 6. And now there are 2 parts remaining. First 6 chapters essentially focus on Karma Yoga. 7 to 12, which will begin next time, focuses on Bhakti Yoga. And 13 to 18 focuses on Dhyāna-yoga. Bhagavad Gita is like a burger sandwich. So the first 6 chapters is the first layer. 13 to 18 is the second. The meat, the cream, the actual masala is in the middle, 7 to 12, which is a very exciting journey. So please do take part in the Gita discussions. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.